So we've made it through our first month of a COVID-19 market. And April proved to be somewhat of a watershed month in that regard. Buyer activity remained reasonably strong, particularly throughout the Fremantle area, with DG only really experiencing about a 5% fall in normal sales activity that we would have had in an ordinary market. That's a little bit different to the rest of the metropolitan area, where they've experienced across Perth about a halving of normal sales activity when you compare it to April last year. Buyer activity still been quite strong. The Premier, of course, announced recently that some restrictions relating to COVID-19 pandemic have been lifted, and so home opens are back on the agenda for most people coming up this weekend. And I've got mixed feelings about that. I think the private viewings is a really nice kind of intimate, unrushed way for buyers to be introduced to new homes. And I think that's probably proved to be quite a successful way for people to make a buying decision. So home opens, strict social distancing and social hygiene policies will still apply. But for those buyers that are still wanting to keep their distance from others, then private inspections are still available for certainly all of DG's listings, and I'm imagining for other real estate agents active in the market. Leasing activity has remained very strong relative to the lockdown provisions that we've experienced, with leasing activity, particularly at DG, remaining at average levels. And I think that's perhaps in response to a lot of tenancies moving around for those tenants particularly impacted economically by COVID-19, looking to acquire homes that are more in tune with what meets their needs. And of course, during the month of April, impacted by COVID-19, people have spent a lot more time in their homes, at their properties. And whilst we've seen renovation activity increase, just have a look at the queues around the corner at the Bunnings stores, a lot of people have drawn the conclusion that their home no longer really meets their living needs or their aspirations or expectations. And so I think that's probably why there's been still some pretty solid buying activity out there in the marketplace. There's less choice in the market, there's less listings in the market, but buyers are still hungry to find a home that really meets their needs. And so I would not be surprised to see buying activity continue to be relatively strong over the next 6 months. And I think accordingly, home values, I reckon, will probably stay pretty steady. I don't think we'll see significant falls in values over the next 6 months. And just behind me, we've got the Carriage Cafe, a long-term institution, I guess you could say, in Fremantle in the Esplanade Park. And during my lunch hours, when I grab a takeaway from Sushi with Goons up in the Fremantle malls, like many other businesses in Fremantle, they're pretty resilient. They're still opening the doors and making sure that they're providing the services to Fremantle. And I have noticed that over the last month, an increase in foot traffic in and around Fremantle. And I'd imagine that with some of the lifting of the restrictions announced by the Premier, we'll start to see more people come out and about and enjoy the great things that Fremantle has to offer. And finally, the COVID Safe app, as recommended by the Australian government, has been released. And I'd strongly recommend that you will consider signing up for that app. I had no hesitation, I have no fears about the information that I've provided being sold to another party or being misused. So I'll leave that up to you, but I think that we should all do our bit to try and keep everybody in the community as safe as possible from coronavirus and help stop the spread of that disease. And so the COVID Safe app is a good place to start. And remember, at DG, we know Freo.